Hello, everyone. Welcome. So happy to have you here. I'm Patsy. I'm the Associate Archivist here at Jacob's Pillow, and I want to welcome you to Jacob's Pillow and to this PillowTalk, Dancing the Core Curriculum with Celeste Miller. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge that the land on which we're gathering, speaking, dancing is the unceded land of the Mohawkaniak, or Mohican peoples. I also want to acknowledge the Agawam and the Pecumtuck and the Nipmuc, who also lived in what we now call Western Massachusetts. The Mohican peoples who danced, lived, spoke on this land for countless generations were removed to Wisconsin and are now known as the Stockbridge-Munsee community. We want to pay honor and respect to their ancestors, past and present, as we commit to building a more inclusive and equitable space for all. I'm going to introduce our illustrious speaker, Celeste Miller, and then I'm going to give the floor over to Celeste, and Celeste will engage you in a presentation that you all will be involved in. And then I'm going to come back up at the end to have a little bit of a conversation with Celeste, and then to ask some of y'all to ask your questions. So be thinking about what you want to be asking Celeste. To start, I would like to introduce Celeste. So Celeste Miller is a multifaceted dance artist whose career includes solo performance, choreography, arts activism, community arts projects, and more. She has an MFA in choreography from Hollins University and is assistant professor in the Department of Theater and Dance at Grinnell College. She has had lead roles in a range of community arts projects, including the Nurses Project, the American Festival Project Big Sky Spinning, and Headwaters. She was artist in residence and later co-artistic director with the Liz Lerman Dance Exchange from 1999 to 2003. And there she worked as project leader, choreographer, and performer for Lerman's National Hallelujah Project, a portion of which utilized Jacob's Pillow, both as inspiration and as performance venue. Zooming in on Jacob's Pillow and some of the deep connections that Miller has here, she was the director of the Pillow's Choreographers Lab, focusing on dance and community engagement from 1993 to 2010. She is co-founder of the Jacob's Pillow Curriculum in Motion from 1993 through present. She has been lead artist with Jacob's Pillow Medicine in Motion program since its inception in 2018, and is director of the Curriculum in Motion Institute, which is here with us this week at Jacob's Pillow, and has been with that program since its launch in 2010. So we are so excited to be welcoming Celeste Miller back here and to be here at this Pillow Talk where we're going to hear more from her, dig into some of this process, dig into her work, and then have more conversation as we engage together. So I'm going to turn this over to Celeste. Please welcome her.
Thank you. Thanks, Patsy. Thank you, everybody. So I'm Celeste. I use she, they pronouns. The first thing I'd like to do, actually, is stay in one place. Okay, I'm going to try. If you would, please, just take one arm and bring it up in the air and bring it down again. Gorgeous. We all just moved. We're moving all the time, right? Our hearts are beating. Blood is coursing through. Our cells are doing that marvelous mitosis, changing, evolving things. Our hair is falling out and growing and just like all this stuff is happening. And so now just for a second, just focus on your breathing. You don't have to change anything, just like, oh, and I also do this thing called breathing. You put your intention on it. Intention and attention. I'm going to invite you to take an arm up and down again, but this time we'll start with a breath, and I want you to think of the intention. Is it because you were given an instruction? Are you reaching for something? Pushing something? Are you floating? Is it powerful? Is it soft? Is it gentle? As fast? Is it slow? But you're just going to take that same movement of reaching the arm up and down again, starting with a breath, and then figuring out what is the intention of that movement. Find your breath, and when you're ready, bring your arm up and down again. Thank you. In my book, We All Just Danced. I define dance as movement aware of itself, practiced with intent. Movement aware of itself, practiced with intent. That, for me, that definition is a basket big enough for everybody to dance. From the most technically profound dancer in any dance form to the person in the hospital bed who the only movement they have access to is the movement of their eyes. It's a basket big enough for every body. That's the center and the core of my work. And that's what I want to talk about today is curriculum in motion, which has come out of that. So I was born in New York City, raised in Jersey, about a 30-minute bus ride from New York City. So by the time I was a teenager, I was studying dance in New York City. I studied at the Ailey School. I studied at the New Dance Group, visited other places. When I found Murray Lewis and Alwyn Nicolai, I dropped in. I was home. That was me, and that was going. However, I was 16 in 1969, and I couldn't figure out whether I should be in the dance studio or I should be on the streets protesting. And that's my life. I'm trying to always find that intersection. The Pillow has been my home for a very long time. Running the Curriculum in Motion program, which I'll talk mostly about, starting in 1993. The first fall I was here in 1994, and I spent so much time coming back and forth here to the Pillow that my daughter thought we had a country home in the Berkshires. I always know how old Curriculum in Motion is because it started the year of her birth. The Pillow has been my home through major upheavals in my life, including major losses, major illnesses, also through major breakthroughs, aha moments, and moments of community. It's the place I walk with my ancestors. I walk here with my ancestors, past, present, and future. I first came to the Pillow as a child of 8 or 9 years old, and the book, Janie and the Summer Dance Camp, Ask Norton, was one of my earliest influences on what dance can do. So I want to do a neighbor thing for a moment. I'm going to ask you to turn to a neighbor, and I'm going to invite you to share a response to a couple of questions. So think about who your partner will be. It has to be done in partners, right? If you are like me and incredibly shy and hate talking in these sort of situations, just sit by yourself, close your eyes, and you can just meditate on this by yourself. Okay? My friend Michael and Kimberly are going to be available just in case you're like, but I want a partner, but I can't find one, and they would be glad to join you. So if you could just sort of like indicate it by glance of eye that you have somebody that you're gonna look at that, and we're even reaching like, oh, lovely. Yeah, gorgeous, gorgeous. Or just be by yourself, truly and really. So I'm going to ask 3 questions, which I will repeat. The questions are, when was a time your body taught you something? What does your body know, understand differently than your prefrontal cortex? What is the role of dance in your life, in your cultural tradition? So I'll give you about 30 seconds with your partner, and it will either be too long or not long enough. As we know, as dancers, time, 5, 6, 7, 8, we got it. And also, as my friend Justin has taught me, time is drama. So with your partner, decide who will share first, right? When was a time your body taught you something? And then you can just sort of wrap up that exchange and then let your partner tell you. So just wrap that up and now listen to your partner, and your partner will tell you when was the time your body taught you something. So switch roles. Great. And your second question. What does your body know, understand differently than your prefrontal cortex. So 30 seconds to let your first person talk. Does your body know differently than what your prefrontal cortex tells you? And then you just can sort of wrap that up and take an opportunity to listen to your partner. So your partner has a chance to tell you, what does your body know or understand differently than your prefrontal cortex? Just shift. Lovely. Here's your final question. What is the role of dance in your life? What is the role of dance in your life, your cultural tradition? And let your first partner tell you. And take a chance to shift. Listen to your partner. Partner gets to tell you about their role of dance in their life and dance in their cultural tradition. Thank you. I know you probably have much more to say, and I hope you will continue talking with each other about these things. So now I have a story for you. So I was in high school, a high school student, and I hated science. I didn't get it, and it didn't get me. I hated science, and I didn't do well at it. So here I was in my junior year of high school, and I was taking my last science class, my last required science class, and I was thrilled to death, right? No more science. Sit in science class, and my science teacher's going on about atomic structure and protons and neutrons and repelling and attracting and electrons that just sort of jump, disappear. You don't know where they're going to reappear. I was like, oh my God. I was having a vision. I went home. I found everything I could about atomic structure. Now, this is especially challenging because there was no internet. Okay? This means my family was lucky enough to have an encyclopedia set. I was deep in the encyclopedia. I was deep in the textbook. Nothing was really telling me what I really wanted to know. I turned to my body. I'm like, repelling, attracting, jumping, and you never know where you're going to end up, right? Oh my God, this is incredible. And I made a whole dance that helped me understand atomic structure. So I went the next day to school, and I never talked to teachers. I never did teacher meetings, but I went and I saw my science teacher, and I said, I love it. I love science. I want to sign up for physics. This is amazing. Now, I'm not going to be a scientist, but this is so beautiful and magical and mathematical, and you can move it. And I just learned that if I can dance something, I can understand it. I can learn it. He said, don't we have a home ec class somewhere in this school you could take? I didn't take physics. But that started the seed. That's the curriculum motion seed. Access, right? Why couldn't that body intelligence be respected? Why couldn't I be encouraged to have become a nuclear scientist? Right? Why couldn't I be running NASA? Right? Ooh, we'd have fun. So as an adult artist, I began exploring these ideas in my choreography, with my company, in classrooms, and in community organizing. And then this synchronous moment of the pillow. Sam Miller invited me here, Sam Miller and Bill Yelly invited me here with David Dorfman, Tom Truss, who's a Berkshire artist, Marlise Yarby, who had just come off choreographing Rent, and myself. And they said to us, this is 1993, they said to us, there is the perception that the pillow is the alien on the mountain. We're still talking about that perception, right? 1993. What can we do? What could the four of you help us think about in terms of changing that perception? Well, we changed the world. In 2 days, we were just like all over. We met in the stone dining room. It was in December. It was snow. It was up to the windows. Well, halfway up to the windows. There was no heat in the stone dining room. We were stoked on the wood stove, and we talked nonstop for 2 days. And I was a mother of a 5-month-old who I was nursing. It was an intense period of time. So as we thought about it, we realized that one of the things about any community is that a school is the microcosm of the community. So what could we do about work in the school? Now, first, the four of us had a good hour kvetch about how we hate working in the schools, right? How horrible and awful it is. And then it was like, well, what would we do with it? So the first thing that our group decided was that it was like, we want to be in high school. I mean, we know how this works, K through 5, and we know the kids love us and all that. But what about the teenager? What about the kid who thinks dance and you say dance and they go, oh, you're a ballerina, right? That's the kids I want to work with, right? What about going into a biology class? What about going into an English lit class? What about going into an algebra class? What about going into all those sorts of classes and figuring out how can we just share this tool? So that's how the program started. We called it the Anchor Project at first because we thought we were going to anchor it in one location so that location could become our lab. Right? A place that we understood the community of that school. So we weren't constantly having to try to reinvent the wheel of knowing the layout of the school, how does the administration work, what is the culture of the school, that we could learn and then reappear each year to work. So we used to, I think that it's still kind of working that way, which is that we went for a 2-week residency in the fall and a 2-week residency in the spring, and we partner up with a classroom teacher. And the classroom teacher says, I'm the biology teacher. This week in biology, we're working on mitosis. I go, let me read more about that. One more, can you tell me about mitosis? What is it that people don't usually get about mitosis? And we start to make a dance about it. But I stopped short of making the dance myself. And I turn my magic tools over to the students. And I say, you make the dance. And they do. So J.R. Glover was a major part of forming Curriculum in Motion with me. And then Tasia and I just got even deeper into all sorts of things. We have a group of about 9 founding artists. Also shaping the program were all those students for all those years, because they have big impact in it, and the teachers, and the school administrators, and the Pillow staff. We nurtured this program to where it is today. Curriculum in Motion, entering its 30th year. As the Pillow is in its 90th year, we are entering our 30th. We have this immense relationship with this place, this land, and these ancestors. But stories are best. Okay. This one's called Boys Jumping. So it's a high school class, and the class is for students, freshmen, who don't have the skills to make it in high school. They don't have the reading, writing skills to make it in high school. It's a fabulous teacher, Doug Bradford. He figured out the way to get those students interested in literature was film, because they couldn't read a novel that was challenging enough, right? Because they don't have those skills. But they're smart enough to talk about theme and metaphor and all those things. So let's analyze film. So the first day I got there, they were watching On the Waterfront. And they hadn't finished watching it. So I spent the first 2 days of my residency watching them watch On the Waterfront. Seeing when their temperature rose, when their breathing got going, when they were disenchanted, when they were, and listening to how the teacher was leading them in conversation. Then it's my turn. We met in an open space, and before they got there, I had taken masking tape and taped out on the floor sort of shapes of boxes. And they show up and they go, we're not dancing. I said, oh, I wouldn't want you to. Please don't. So I said, what I was wondering is I have these boxes. I wonder if there's anybody who can jump from one to the other. Yeah. You want me to go to the next one? Oh, I don't know. Do you want to? Yeah. Suddenly they're all jumping, trying to get in from, and I put them in just, I could do 2. I could get over 3. I could do this. And then they were like, this is chaos. I was like, yeah, this is utter chaos. What are we going to do? And they figured it out. They said, all right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to start on one end, and everybody's going to have a turn, and then they're going to get to the other end. I said, I don't know if it's going to work. Let's try it. It'll work. Of course it worked, right? They figured the whole thing out. We're going on this like crazy. And then they're like, but what else can we do? I'm like, I don't know. What else can you do, right? So they keep teaching the class. They're the ones who are teaching the class, right? I could say, could you try levels? Could you try spin? They're the ones who realize that that's what it needed to stay interesting, right? They are going like crazy. At one point, the bell rings. That was a fun thing. The bell rings. It's like you get 40 minutes with them, right? Bell rings, and they're like, bah, out. Except one of them turns, the kind of ringleader of the group turns right as he's about to leave, and he goes, you're going to be back tomorrow, right? I'll be back tomorrow. We kept doing this. They kept getting more and more invested in this. At one point, I started to worry. Do they understand that this was a metaphor for On the Waterfront? Right? So I thought, well, I'll ask. So I paused them, and they're like, what? And I said, I just want to, ask you, like, why do you think we're doing this? The ringleader looks at me and says, it's on the waterfront, right? The roof is the place where the character goes to think without the pressures of your screwed up life. This is the way that we can spend some time up on the roof without the pressures of our screwed up lives. Now, can we get back to jumping? Absolutely. Here's another one. This was kindergarten. And Matthew. All you ever heard from the teachers was Matthew, sit down. Matthew, stop. Okay. So in the session that I had with them, we were talking about observing and seeing. And the task that we were going to do was we were going to go outside and we practiced with our hands. We were going to go to 5. You looked at something that was moving and you could pull it in. So right now I'm looking, I see somebody walking. I have 1, right? I see the fan moving. I have 2. I see the trees, leaves blowing. I have 3. So they were going to collect 5. And when they had a fist, they would just let me know that they had collected them. So, and of course we were going to do it silently. We weren't going to talk. Big challenge for Matthew. But we were gonna do it, and it had to do with going like this. And so Matthew said, "Do I lose one every time I talk?" I was like, "Yeah, you lose one every time you talk. I don't know, you make the rules, right?" So we're going, and I'm also trying to with my body. When I see something happening, I'm like, so we're also, whoa, what did she see, right? Okay, there's a bed of pansies, and a breeze was coming through the pansies, and they were moving, right? And I was like, kids all clustered around, and there's Matthew. If I could stand up, I would, but I got a bad hip. Anyhow, Matthew starts shaking. Miss Celeste! I can feel it! I can feel it. Matthew. Last one in this sequence. Biology class. We're doing mRNA molecules. Very important when you look at study COVID vaccine these days, right? mRNA molecules. So the kids are working. So usually the structure is that we give the kids a task of something to work on and some tools to play with, and they're off working in small groups to then make the dance. And the science teacher, the biology teacher, and I are standing there available, right? And overhearing and listening. All of a sudden, like shot out of a cannon, this kid comes bursting out of one of the groups and says, okay, and he looks, I don't know which one of you to ask, but we need to know. We cannot make the dance until we know. How does the mRNA molecule move? Is it slithery? Does it sort of ooze? Does it directly go? Does it hop or leap? How does the mRNA molecule move? The biology teacher says, I don't know. No one has ever asked me that question before. Curriculum in Motion is dance for everybody and can take place anywhere. Classroom, studio, stage, hospital bed, boardroom, outdoors. Anyone, everyone becomes a dance maker, drawing on their own authentic movement choices to create movement metaphors, which allow them to explore ideas, create, reflect, and share. I want to sum up these stories about working in the high school with what the English teacher shared with me. So always when we finish at the school, we have the teachers also do a reflection on their learning and their student learning. And so he wrote me and he said, I wanted to share with you that one boy in the class commented, in school, we are either emotional and creative or we are intellectual. We are never given a chance to be emotional, creative, and intellectual at the same time. We were working on the poetry unit. I feel now that I understand why the poet wrote the poem. And then he shared a poem that one of their students wrote. Using bodies to form words, pulling lines off the page and into ourselves, breathing the meaning, finding a way to express the artist's expression, movement to enhance understanding. I'm a 9th grader. So I'd love you to turn back to your partner for a second, another 30-second exchange. Did one of these stories stand out for you or remind you of your own story? So just go to your partner, share how you'd like. Was one story appealing to you or remind you of one of your own stories? And then you can sort of wrap up and let the other person have a chance to tell you their story. Thank you. And you can just sort of wrap up on that story. And when you're ready, you can bring your attention back. So curriculum in motion is a methodology. Curriculum in motion works in schools and other settings. We think of it as a methodology, not a template or a series of lesson plans. The community partner for most of Curriculum Motion's existence here in the Berkshires has been Monument Mountain Regional High School in Great Barrington, and Conti Elementary that Kimberly runs, and Beckett Elementary, which another of our artists, Dawn Lane, runs. There are 6 strands that make Curriculum in Motion. At the center is understanding a partnership with a community partner. So often we think about artists, and it's wonderful, artists initiate and do on their own. But in this model, in this methodology, it's really important that the artist find a community partner to work with. And so the most simple way to think about it is a school, right? Work with a school. And the school says, yes, come do this, come work with the 3rd graders. We want to know more. We want to know, what is it that your community organization or group wants to know? What do they need help spending more time with to reflect? What is an issue, a concern, or a theme that you are working on? And we listen deeply. And as artists, of course, as soon as people start talking, our movement metaphor brain is going wild, like, whoa, communication chain, oh, I see it, right? Supporting each other's back, oh, I got it. We're just like, bum, 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 bum. Mathematic, dividing things into parts and equals, and bum, 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 bum. We got it, right? So then we have these conversations about how we can work together. In strand 2, the choreographer artist accepts this partner's curriculum as a mini commission. How can dancing, moving, creating dance about this topic, issue, concern, curriculum provide us with alternative insights into this content? Not solutions. Alternative insights into the content. The choreographer, getting all ready and gets all this excited and going, stops short of making the dance. And that's where it's so hard for an artist, because it's like, I can feel, I'm like little Matthew, I can feel it, right? Miss Celeste. We stop short and we say, you have the tools. I gave you a few, you also, we are all innate choreographers. How are you gonna make it? And I love those moments where they start taking some of my tools and then they start making up their own ways of doing it. I'm like, thank you, now I got more stuff in my bag, right? It's a supportive environment for the participants to make the dance in order to know. K-N-O-W. K for knowledge, body knowledge. N for being nimble. O, open to possibilities. And W for wonder. Curriculum in Motion does not have prescribed lesson plans or templates for activities. The artist, each one is different. So if you go into the archives and you ask Patsy or Norton, can I see some examples of Curriculum in Motion? Everyone looks totally different. And that's part of our calling card. That's what we want it to be. Strand 3 is what we call the partner in the circle. We're going into the spaces as guests. We are going into somebody else's home, right? It's the biology teacher's classroom. It's our space. We need to be welcomed in, invited in, and we need to know the rules of the house. And that's where our partner in the circle provides. Strand 4, strong choreographic practice and strong curriculum content. One is not in service of the other. They are both mutually supportive. It's an exchange between knowledges, expression, and rigor in choreographic practice and content. In Strand 5, we encourage all artists to have artist peers to build their practices with. We are so under this like crazy notion of the lone genius artist, right? It's destructive. It doesn't help anything, right? We are not lone genius artists. We are all holding all the knowledge together, and we share it with one another. And if we have a network of people that I can go, Kimberly, I'm doing this thing. Could I just run some ideas by you? And she's like, yeah, and you know what? And I was thinking about this thing. So we create this network. We encourage all artists to be aware of, number 6, their meta-research question. Whether I'm working with third graders, whether I'm working in a hospital, where I'm working with incarcerated women, whether I'm working in a high school biology class, there's something as an artist I always want to know. In the studio, in the community space. So I don't separate out, this is my community work, this is my artistic work. It's an iterative process that all speaks together. I just heard Lynn talk beautifully. Lynn is one of our Institute members, talk beautifully about how this iterative process works with our dance companies and how we begin to fuel that and feed that and how that builds people who are interested in dance because they have had the gift of having experienced the magic of the moment. Oh my gosh, we have boxes and boxes and boxes and boxes, and I don't know what attic here in the pillow of all the student reflections. It just goes on and on and on. And I'd have to say, most of them, like 98%, are like, we loved this. I admit, we have a few that are like, this was a waste of my time. That's okay. Not everything has to be for everybody. The current educational system we have works for less than that in terms of percentages, right? So we're doing pretty good. With this, here's my final story. So I just want to say we have an institute now, the Curriculum in Motion Institute, which is to train other professional choreographers in how to find a way to incorporate this methodology into their work and their thinking and their lives and being. So through my work at Grinnell College, I began to get interested in connections with other systems. So there's the system of education. How about the system of medicine? Ended up working with the Medical Humanities program. Just to summarize it real quickly, went and taught one of the Medical Humanities classes with 2 of my students from Grinnell. So undergrad students, one of whom was a pre-med major, the other who was a dance and theater major, right? So they were my co-teachers with the medical students, right? Gorgeous opportunity to have. We decided to open the class with the workshop session with one of my dancers. The dancer had made a story. She lives with Crohn's disease, and she made a dance about what it means to live with a chronic illness. And so we decided to open that up to use the art as a way to talk about what is that patient-doctor relationship. And then we were going to go into movement activities that explored the multi-directionality of doctor-patient relationship. Is there a possibility that it goes any way other than this? So I'm going to let her speak because she sent me this that she wrote about it. And she's given me permission to share it anonymously. She wrote, I had some internal debate over whether or not attending this evening's interpretive dance was the best use of my time, considering there's a pathology exam tomorrow and I could use the time studying. But I knew that if I did not attend, I would be missing something that I would later regret. And I was correct in my assumption. I hate dancing, unless mildly intoxicated. The freedom of movement defies my every desire for absolute and utter control. I knew that part of the workshop was to include a conversation starter dance piece by one of the student co-facilitators from Grinnell, a person living with Crohn's. My goal in attending the session was to keep an open mind and not share that I too was a crone's companion. I spent much of the session wondering why I was so unwilling to share. I was able to draw two conclusions. One, I am not ready to share because I am not an open book to those I do not know. My private life and my work life are two things I do not mix. Two, today was about Lauren, the student, and her story, not about me and mine. In our discussion after the dance, Lauren talked about how fortunate she had been with healthcare professionals. I wanted to say that one of my experiences left a scar I hope makes me constantly strive to be the best doctor I can. In her piece, Lauren talked and danced about living with Crohn's, realizing that it is a part of her. Her piece was, to me, relatively upbeat. She was open. She could share. She wasn't bitter. She didn't focus on days when she didn't want to leave bed or her stomach hurt so bad that she wanted to vomit, or she wondered whether or not the smallest bite of the most innocent food would cause her stomach pain because one of those days. She was strong. And yet she was hiding, as I am hiding. Underneath my baggy sweatpants and loose fleece, I am hiding. Celeste, here's my poem. You have it too. She sat across from me, short brown hair and laughing blue eyes. She didn't know what I knew. I analyzed her, overanalyzed her, her composure, her posture, her comfort. She had come to terms with this monster that raged inside of her. On occasion, without warning, at both the best and worst of times, if only there could actually be a best. She was prepared. I walled off raw emotions. But some escaped through my eyes, not tears. Just extra dryness from forcing them open, synthesizing dryness to prevent the damp predecessor of tears. To those in the room who did know, my questions had edge. They were sharp, direct. They were experience, from an understanding, a connection that she did not know we shared. I kept it, this secret of mine, this truth that was ours, and I watched as she remembered the times she had been frustrated. I imagined shadows in her eyes from when she was misread, misjudged for who she was because of the monster which she couldn't tell others about, that self versus self battle, chronically raging inside of her. I saw her dance. And then I danced. This dance had meaning, a lead, a follow, in pairs, 6 pairs around a room, soft music, hear breaths and footsteps and pause and shape and tap, new shape and touch in hands, there, perfect, but alone, lead, follow, leads, follow, stops, a hand on another's shoulder and sculpt, together, not alone. Another lead. She sculpts the pair, perfects, lead one's work, the paired sculpture grows. I led. I was led. The free form was meditation for my soul, healing for my body, carefree and simple. It made me forget my purpose that evening. Yet at the same time, I remembered terms. They were coming closer. Terms. I was getting closer. They will peacefully invade these terms. And I will gladly sign. No fear of needle pokes, no dread of evening phone calls, no salty drops on journal entries. These terms will make me stable. These terms will make me share. And finally, I will understand. I have it too. I didn't tell you, but now you know. There are moments in life you know you will remember forever because you added a something to yourself in being a part of that moment. Today was a moment for me. I thank all the artists, all the people I've ever had a chance to dance with, all the movers, all the students, all my colleagues, and all my ancestors. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Celeste. I feel like that was such a beautiful listening, engaging, but also embodied experience. And I feel like maybe a little bit of that window into sort of some of your practice, some of your creativity, your heart. And so I wonder, as we start the conversation where I ask you a few questions, be thinking about y'all's questions too, I wonder if maybe you could talk about, you speak about yourself as being both that, artist, choreographer, but also that community organizer, that activist. And I wonder, how do you see those strands interweaving? How does the choreography and performance support the activism, and like vice versa for you?
As Kimberly always reminds us, dance makes everything better. So in order to make a better world, I need to dance. Not everybody needs to dance to make a better world, but I need to dance to make a better world. And I think that dance gives us a tool to, I used to say, art can change the world. And I've just come to believe it can change the way we participate in the world. And I feel I do it because I have to do it.
That's fantastic. And as I was listening to you, particularly in the recounting of some of these stories, I was so sort of captivated by how you were drawn in by those tricky ones. You were excited about those teens, you were excited about Matthew, And I wonder, what is that draws you in? And how does working with those tricky populations or those tricky students, how does that build and inform and maybe even grow the work as you do it?
It's so interesting because I feel that so you're standing in a circle and there's, a few who are there who are like, yes, let's do this. We want to dance. We're there for you. And there's that one who's just like giving you the eye and it's going to be hard. And for some reason, all my attention goes right there. And I forget about everybody else. And I'm like, I'm a failure. I can't do this. They hate me. And, and then it's like, it's because this person is calling out and going, it's not going to be easy. It's not easy. If you can get me to dance and I'm saying you can't, then we might get somewhere. It's that challenge to myself to not take lightly what it is that I do. And I've just always, I love them the best. I love the most the one who gives me the hardest time. Though in the moment I'm like,
well, that's so amazing. And I think, I think we can sort of hear that by the stories that those are the ones that, stick with you too. As we're moving into 30 years of curriculum in motion, I'm wondering, if you could, again, thinking sort of, what were some of those early challenges, but also how has that evolved, right? Like you've been with this process for 30 years, and are those still the struggles that you have, or have those come to grow and change as you've grown and changed this program?
I think it's thinking about, we get better at things, so the more often we encounter something that is a challenge, it's not that I certainly can't. I fail all the time in not getting somebody to join in, It's not a trick, But if I don't have that push, then where am I getting the... it's like when the windstorms come through and they rip everything up and you're like, oh, but that tree, I love that tree and it was so beautiful and now, but then there's something else that's growing up inside of it, So we need the storm and the ripping up and we need the drought and we need all those things to make this all beautiful. It's not beautiful if it doesn't have that conflict inside of us too. And how can I help the people I'm sorry, that was a bad word, but how can I be present with the people that I am present with when they are facing challenges, if I also am not also facing my own challenges, right? And so that together we're going, okay, so my friend over here is struggling with the fact that he doesn't want to dance in front of his peers, and I'm struggling with the fact that I'm not the most popular girl in the classroom, and we're all struggling on these things, and how can we turn to the thing that we know, which our body holds the answer, to help us land in that place of understanding and growing. And the Institute is the place where curriculum motion moved next. I was talking about that in this interview this morning, that we could decide, what can you do with a program, right? There's so many ways you can replicate it. We could have 1,000 curriculum motion school residencies in Massachusetts, around the world. That's like one replication. It's a gorgeous one. It's just one that I'm personally not as excited about, but what I am excited about is inspiring other dance artists to continue to do their work, see if any of the curriculum in motion methodology is of use for the work that they want to do, so we're all feeding this network so that the world gradually begins to change, because one day, Congress will not start until they all dance together.
And it's so impactful and powerful to hear you talking about this curriculum in motion model, and to be, growing it and still working in those schools. I've heard that you're often now the students that you have are children of the students you had before, right? That you have that real growth, but also that you're looking to be bringing this model to other places. And so I'm wondering, what do you see about curriculum in motion that allows you to, bring that to the medical field, or, bring that to another space?
It's the belief that dance makes everything better. Right? And also, if I want to affect systematic change, because that's what I think we've got to hit change, is in the systems of oppression, right? So we have to figure out how can we work to make systemic change. And that systemic change is partnering with systems, right? So I think the medical system needs a lot of help. Right? And so we can work with the medical system, and I feel like my work is in the dirt and in the roots. And we were just meeting with our medical partners a few months ago, and they were saying what we need to do is make sure that this makes its way to our administrators. Right? And it's sort of like, yes, and who is the best person to do that? It is probably not me, the stranger dancer. It felt like stranger danger, dancer in the room, right, who's going to make that change, but it is going to make a change with somebody who took a medical humanities class where they use movement, where they go, and then they're a teacher of other medical students, and they start questioning, challenging all these things. So I just feel like it's that rhizome network of underground root systems that's going to start making systemic change.
And, as a last question before I open it up to y'all, what do you see as that future, right? Where are those rhizomes going, and what do you hope that we're talking about in 30 years, celebrating the 60th, almost the 60th anniversary of Curriculum in Motion?
Legal systems, right? Yeah. So, and every other system that all my amazing group of Institute participants have all been talking about and hitting in the most amazing ways that I would never have thought about. So it's kind of like, and where are you working? And where are you working? And where are you working? Yeah.
And we are blessed to have much of that community here with us today. So I will turn this over to have some questions from y'all. If you could raise your hands, and then I will repeat it so that it's on our camera.
I have a burning question.
Kate.
And I don't want to put you on the spot because I know you have a sore going on, but if there's a way to show us, how does an mRNA molecule move? I need to know.
This burning question is, how does that mRNA molecule move?
It's got information that needs to get delivered from one place to the next. So if you were to put in your body that you had significant information, number one, where in your body would you carry that significant information? Would you need to protect it? Or are you just like, emergency delivery, right? So the answer is, imagine a piece of life that needs to transmit information in order for the survival of life. So therefore, what kind of movement or motion does it need to take? Right? Oh, that was beautiful. So I'd show the camera. She did the dance. Careful, right? And that's what one student might say, and another student might go like, we got to get them through, right? And in that conversation between the student who was like, the molecule has to carry it carefully, and somebody else is like, no, it's like an ambulance going, and somebody else was like, it goes like this, and somebody else like, it's carefree. In that conversation, in that imagination conversation, is where we start getting more and more curious in that sense of wonder. more and more curious about this mRNA thing. So again, it's not about finding the answer, right? It's just about getting so in touch with loving and our encouraging curiosity. Thank you for that question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, please.
So I work for an art service organization currently, and one of the conversations that we have pretty often is like our sustainability practices, where we go into these schools for a year and wanting to encourage those practices to happen sans artists being there, because it's easy when you have artists in school to facilitate experiences for students. So I'm just curious, because you mentioned only 2-week residencies, and for me I was like, oh my gosh.
Right.
I can't even handle a year. That's not enough time. So just like how you encourage sustainability outside of dancers, choreographers being there to cater those practices.
That is such an important question. So
And this question, I'm just going to repeat it, is someone coming from an art service organization asking about the sustainability. You come in, you do this deep work, but then you leave that community. And how does that practice stay and sustain and maybe even grow?
Yep. It's essential question in the work that all of us are trying to do, right? And I like to think about, again, how do we work together rather than apart, right? So if I am only having this one program and it delivers to one school and then to another school and another school, my single program may not have a sustainability possibility because that's our model. However, what if there's a professional development training for the teachers in that school so they can figure out how to put embodied learning experiences into their daily or weekly curriculum. And we also really want to say that the artist is essential. And I know this, you feel this in your organization, right? It's like on one hand, we can't supply an artist for every moment for every school. On the other hand, why not? Right? So we want to work systemically and to think about how can we partner with lots of other organizations. Could it be a partnership? I did at Monument Mountain one year, what I did was I observed classroom teachers teaching, and my observation was to see how they already use movement in their classroom. And not purposely, just like because they all do. They all pretty much all use movement in their classroom. And I remember working with the algebra teacher, and so all the students are facing the front, the board, and she said, okay, get out your homework. The answers to the homework are written on a piece of paper in the back of the classroom. So lift your chair and turn 180 degrees and get the answers. They lifted their chairs and they turned them around. And as they lifted and turned, one boy goes, I love this. It was such a simple moment of movement. But the teacher wasn't aware that she was teaching embodied learning. And I pointed out, and she's like, oh my God, I do stuff like that all the time. So now she has a heightened awareness of doing that. And she has a heightened desire for more partnering with artists to make it happen, you know? So that we start, and that's the essential question that our institute begins to look at is how can we find ways to make ourselves essential in this work and also know that there's a limited number of artists that your institution can afford to hire to do the work, and yet if the demand increases, then maybe the supply can increase. So, but we have to think about partners, right? Who's another partner in the piece of it? Work is so important. Thank you for the work you're doing.
I'm wondering if there's another question out here. Well, I think I can speak for everyone when I say I hope this is part of a continuing conversation. And please welcome any of you to come up and be speaking with Celeste and hopefully continuing on through time as we celebrate the continuing evolution of this program here and elsewhere. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Yay. Thank you. Yay.